Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Tuesday, August 6th. So I thought today, I got quite a few views yesterday and some extra comments on our parts replacers. But the big thing I was picking up on is, how people are worried about the stock market and the times and so forth. Well, hang tight. Alrighty, welcome back. My name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Tuesday, August 6th, and it's available on podcast as well. So, it's always been the economy stupid. Yeah? I don't pay much attention to the stock market, guys, because it's just, to me, anyways, it's rich people getting richer than what they need to be because they couldn't spend all the money they've got now, that are billionaires. And they're causing panic, which the average guy, and I'm not talking average guy, I mean, your middle class people that do invest in stock and they try to invest in stock for the long haul, I hope, right? But if they get spooked, they're afraid that they're going to lose everything. They dump it. And I remember the last time, what was it, 10, 12 years ago? But IBM stock was down to like a buck something a share. I should have bought a buttload of that share, of those shares. But I don't play the stock market. I'm not willing to play the game. If you're going to play the stock market, you need to be long term. That's it. You need to stick with it. You need to, even when times look desperate, stop checking your stock on a daily, hourly basis and let it happen, whatever's going to happen. If the company decides to go bankrupt, well, they go bankrupt, right? Biggest thing I've seen is, it had to happen. It was coming, all right? It's been written on the wall for years. There has to be a course correction. There has to be, when you have inflation going that fast and wages staying stagnant or going backwards, something's going to break. And when they have easy money out there for people to borrow to go get themselves into debt, I mean, what is it? A basic credit card now that your average person is like 26, 27%? It's easy to do. And during the good times, you think, oh, I got this all figured out. But what happens when there's a downturn? That's one of the reasons why when I talk business with you is I tell you, keep your debt low. Keep your debt low as possible. The more debt you're carrying, the more risk you're carrying. Yes, it makes you a bigger shot faster, but your bigger shot faster may not last that long. If you're in it for the long haul, then build the business using the money that the business is making, the profits. That's your expansion. Or if you got a couple extra dollars from your regular job while you're building it. But I would rather see you work nights and weekends and make it $300-400 and put that towards doing it full time if that's what you want. There's a lot of guys that just want to stay strictly part time with this, and that's fine too. Don't panic. That's all I can tell you. Don't panic. I'm I'm very hopeful. I mean, I've been watching the stock market. As far as on the news last night, I think it was down 1,300 points. It's at almost 40. It's 39. It should be right around 26, 27. So there's been that bubble for a long time. And what happens with a bubble? If it gets too big, it pops. And we need that correction. We need that to save our economy, to help drive down inflation, right? I mean, I've had family members and friends say, Eric, why don't you invest in the stock market? And watch your money grow. It's my type of personality, okay? My type of personality says I would rather invest in me and buy and sell and make profits versus putting all my eggs into one basket and having somebody else have total control of my money, and maybe we'll make a profit or maybe we'll lose, right? Sorry, it ain't going to happen, because if I gotta carry the risk, then I want input, and stock is risk. You're putting trust in that company, that leadership, to do the right things. And, I was just thinking, it probably was 20 years ago when we saw this before. That's how old I am. You start losing track of time. Amos would know right off the bat. But the stock market just crashed. I mean, they shut her down because it was... Why should I mean, for the past 10, 12 years, people have enjoyed, if you're stock market, if you have stock in John Deere writers, John Deere equipment, John Deere this, John Deere that. I just read an article of where they are making record profits, billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. But how are they making that? All right, here's the deal. How many John Deere factories are there in the U.S. that manufacture John Deere parts to build John Deere equipment? I don't know, but guess. Is it 1, 2 left? It's like so many other big companies like that. They sold out the average worker. All right? Here's what they did. They took and they moved all the manufacturing to Mexico, China, and India. Those are the three I can think off the top of my head. So the workers that work for John Deere manufacturing these parts were given walk-in papers. Or in the early days, the ones that had the expertise were asked to stay on and go to China and help the Chinese learn how to do their job. Yeah, you're getting paid to train somebody else to put the screws right to you. Okay, that's one thing. So now everything is being manufactured overseas. So, in the process, the costs are a lot less, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, the quality is too. But if your costs go down, even if you stay at your current rate, now you're making big profits, all right? But companies like John Deere weren't happy with that. They started raising the costs, the prices on all their stuff, while they're paying less to have it manufactured. And I know some of you are going to say, well, Eric, they're made here in the U.S. No, they're assembled here in the U.S. Read the sticker. They're not made here. All the parts are coming from overseas or Mexico. And you may have a John Deere plant in your state that all the workers do is the parts come to them and they assemble the parts. They put it together. They don't make that anymore. They just put the parts together. Kind of like a part replacer, right? But when they did that, when they closed down all that manufacturing in the U.S., because it was getting costly and they weren't making a lot of money, and companies, especially CEOs, they want to make profits, make it themselves look good, and most of them are on a tiered system when it comes to bonuses. The more profit you make, the more bonus you get in the upper salaried group, right? And I watched these companies doing it. Come to think of it, it was a little over 20 years ago because I was in college. And my father-in-law and I would have conversations because he was a vice president for IBM. And he had stock in IBM. And I'm like, why are all these companies moving to China, India, Mexico? I mean, we had this run with Japan. Remember a long time ago, Japan? But they weren't manufacturing for U.S. markets. They were manufacturing their own and sending it into U.S. markets. There's a difference. I mean, he just said business is business. And if you're in that upper echelon, the management, if you're not making money for the company, showing a profit, you're not going to be there long. And he had started with IBM when they were doing COBOL, if anybody knows programming, because he was a programmer when he first started. And that's what I graduated as. Is he used to write programs in COBOL for IBM systems. But again, why do I not buy stock? Because if I have to assume all the risk, which I am, because I'm investing into your company and hoping that you do the right thing and you're not underhanded or doing things illegal. But if you make the wrong decision, you're not the only one that loses. I lose. And I'm not that keen on putting my faith in you to make a decision concerning my money. So I just stayed out of it. I mean, when I was working for the mines, I had a 401k, and I had coworkers, great coworkers, that would check their stock at noon. And, this week they were telling me how much money they made. And then next week they were crying the blues because it was down. I never even looked. I didn't know what I had till I got to where I left the working field there. Why? Because it was a good gig, right? The company had matching funds, and I can't remember if it was 6, 7, or 8%. So if you put in max that you were allowed to out of your one that didn't get taxed, and two, the company matched it and put it in there, and you could start with your 401k right off the bat, but you had no rights to it until you were vested. All right, and I'm trying to think. Being vested was like 4 years or 5 years to become vested. You could still pull your money out, but the money they were putting in, you couldn't have. They take it back. Still, it was a good deal for people that were looking at the long haul. Now people change jobs faster than they change their underwear, right? So I'm going to start wrapping this up. But the main theme is don't panic, all right? If you have money in the stock market and you're younger, you're putting it there for the long haul. Now, if you're older and you're drawing interest or taking a percentage of that money out per month to live on, my advice would still be stop. Don't panic. It'll right itself. It's going to be slim pickings for a little while, but it'll right itself. And you aren't going to see those big profits like you did the last 8-10 years. It's going to be more realistic of 5 to 6% growth. When you're seeing 20, 30, 40% growth in companies, they're ballooning. And if they get too big too fast, what happens? They crumble because they aren't making sure that the base they're building on is solid. They're just shooting for the stars. And they're taking chances. They're cutting corners by setting all their manufacturing overseas. And I'll be honest with you, the biggest thing that they did, the reason they did it was, and I'm not for or against, unions. You know, unions, a lot of these companies felt hamstrung. You know, they couldn't do anything because the union, if you did anything, you had to go through the union first. And, you know, the workers, it was good and bad. You know, it was good that they had job protection, but it was bad because if they had a coworker that was lazier than a hound, the union would keep them there. You know, you couldn't get rid of them. But by going overseas, they eliminated all that, didn't they? They didn't have unions over there. China, they're dealing with China. Mexico, cartels. India, Indians, I guess. But the funny thing to me is you have people saying, oh my God, Eric, the economy's bad now. Now? For us in the private sector, they have been dealing with the average individual. Like with auto mechanic, small engine repair mechanic, you know, shops, all that. We've been seeing that now for years. We've talked about for the past 4 years that people just do not have that disposable income anymore. And if they don't have that disposable income, what happens? They have to tighten their belts. And a lot of times that means they're going to try doing it themselves. And by watching a YouTube video like mine, because they can't afford to pay someone like me to do it for them. When times are better and they do have disposable income, then they're more willing to pay me so that they don't have to deal with that headache. I've always said time is money. If you don't have the time, then it's going to cost you. And if you don't have the money, you're going to have to spend the time learning how to do it. But if you learned anything from this is, you know, make sure if you're going to build a business, build a good foundation, and do it the right way, don't cut corners. Because if you cut corners, you're going to have a weak area that's going to crumble. Just in your own home life, you know, again, don't panic. If you're carrying some debt, we all have debt. Just some more than others. You may have a mortgage. You may have a car payment. That's debt. And that's manageable, right? But if you lose your job, now are you going to be able to keep the house, the car, and all that other stuff? That's kind of like investing in the stock market, except for it's investing in you. See, it's one of those trickle-down economies. So if in the end, it's the economy, stupid. So on that note, you guys have a great Tuesday, and we'll catch you here bright and early tomorrow morning. Again, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for the comments.